Hi, I'm Camille Morehart. Welcome to today's conversation on confidence. I have with me today two extremely technical, extremely amazing ladies, Becky Loop and Nevine Nassif. Each one of them is a fellow at Intel. Becky Loop is Chief Technologist for Quality, and Nevine Nassif is Chief Engineer for Sapphire Rapids, which is the next generation of Xeon. Welcome. So I wanted to have a conversation with you guys about confidence. And I guess to start with, just, do you feel confident?
Depends on the day and the hour. I don't know about Nevine.
In general, I do. I'm a very optimistic person, and I roll that into confidence as well. And, I think you need to remain confident in order to reach the goal that you want to go for. So sometimes you're not quite sure what you're doing, but you need the courage to make that jump and get back into that track that, you're confident about. But as long as you know where you're going, yeah, the confidence has to be there.
So how do you figure out, how do you know where you're going then? Isn't that, to me, that's part of a lack of confidence stems from, is you're not actually sure of that direction?
Well, talking to a lot of people, getting input from a lot of people, talking to a lot of really smart people, understanding, what their point of view is, listening to both. As I said earlier, I'm an optimist. I tend to look at things in a certain way. And so listening to people who look at things in different ways. So there's certain people who will give me all the bad news. Other people who come back and say, well, it's not as bad as that, and so on. So just getting a lot of information, synthesizing it, and then making a decision as to where to go. So, so trying to inject both positivity and realism into the equation.
I guess, Becky, do you feel like you've always had confidence in your life, or is it something that you had to work to attain?
I think it's an ongoing part, right? Confidence in my mind, I use it almost as a barometer. So there's places where I feel a lack of confidence, and that causes me to reflect and say, okay, why do I feel a lack of confidence? Kind of like you were referring to, Camille. Is it that I have a lack of direction? Is it that I need to get more educated? Like Nevine was talking about, I go talk to a bunch of different people to figure out where I want to go. Or is a lack of confidence that there is really something wrong here and I need to shift that direction? So I like to think of all of our different emotions, I feel like, are barometers to tell us whether we're in a place where we need to check ourselves or check our environment to decide whether we do something different or not. And confidence just says, hey, I feel like I'm in a good spot and I'm going well. But I think we also have to be careful of being overconfident, right? And make sure we don't have a blind spot there as well, where we're just driving down a dark hole.
And so how do you protect from that?
Well, that's where Nevine was talking about. You go and talk to your grumpy people, right? The people, you find your Eeyores and you find your people that are going to tell you the world is going out from under your feet, and talk to them and just see where are you relative to that.
Okay, so you look at yourself as kind of you'll go to one side and to the other side of extremes from other people's input, and then go, where am I lining up? And when you're saying, where am I lining up? It almost sounds to me like you're saying, where do I feel the best? Where does this make the most, resonate with me the most?
Where does it make the most sense? And for me, I think a lot in pictures. So the more I talk to people, I feel like I can get a better visual myself of where am I going, depending on the problem I'm solving, whether it's my kids or work or whatever it is, right? You just start to build that picture in that environment in your own head of where am I going? And I use my emotions to figure out, as well as that environment, to figure out, am I on the right path or not? And that's where I think confidence comes into it, is it's one of those metrics you're kind of measuring yourself with.
And Nevine, I guess, have you ever had a time in your career or in your life where you felt confidence really wane?
It's interesting. To me, there's two sides to it. There's the confidence I feel and the confidence I project. And I have to say that I never was able to really project confidence till later in my career. I always felt that other voices in the room made me pull back. And it took, managers telling me, you know what you're doing. You understand the problem, yet you're quiet about it. You should speak up. And honestly, what helped me get there was my kids. So one place I always felt confident was, with how my relationships with my kids and the relationships I had there. And so I eventually started bringing that to work with me, to the point where someone once told me, you sound like a mother when you tell us what we need to do. but
I've achieved it. Okay.
Right. But it took a while for me to get there, to be able to, stand up and say, okay, this is what I believe we should be doing. This is where we should be going. So it wasn't something that was there all along from a work point of view. From a personal point of view, I remember being a kid and getting lost in the neighborhood and never worrying. I always knew I was going to get back home. It didn't matter where I went, where I didn't go. But when it came to work, it took me a while to develop that confidence to actually speak up and say what I believe the right direction was, or what questions we should be asking, etc. It wasn't innate by any stretch of the imagination.
How about you, Becky, for that one?
I love the way that Nevine framed it. I taking it down a slightly different path, just to try to complement it a little bit. You talked about projecting confidence, Nevine. I think about, are there times you got to fake it? Right? Like, oh man, I'm going in to talk to this, whoever it is, right? And I'm like totally freaked out. And what do? Like, there's been times, I remember the first time I had to present to Murti, I walked the stairs. It was back before COVID. I just did like 10 flights of stairs to wake myself up. Or during COVID, I'll do push-ups before a meeting. Like, how do I get myself feeling and projecting more confidence, or, like the stand like an X. So I think that's another thing to think about. And I know I talked to my teenage daughters about, of like, sometimes you're going to totally have to fake it. And what are the tools you can use to at least get your mind there as you start that? Because I feel like once you start it, you're solid.
So that's
right?
A question then. Is it just a matter of, that's almost like from the beginning, you have kind of natural trepidations, but once you're on a roll, you're going, you know what you're talking about. That to me is like a little bit different than faking it. Like you say, where that you're not confident in this thing, but you're going to go act like you are. So what's the difference kind of between those two? Or are both good? Or is there one that, we avoid and one that we go for?
I think it depends on your audience, because I would actually take the second one, because there's times when you're going to want to fake it, and then there's times where you're going to want to be vulnerable. So particularly if you're going into a new space and learning in a new area, there are places where you're not going to want to fake it, because it's just going to undermine your credibility with that person. And you're going to want to walk in and say, look, I have no clue here, ramp me up. I don't even know what questions to ask you, right? What are the couple one-liners that you can give them throughout the one-on-one you're having, or the discussion you're having, to have them keep feeding you? So there's times to be vulnerable, and I think there's times to be a poser.
Okay, when should you be a poser?
It's the introvert in me. I am more comfortable being vulnerable in a small group or one-on-ones, like 5 people. If I'm, presenting up to a larger audience, I'll be vulnerable maybe with some of my peers as we're prepping. But when I get into that bigger audience, bigger room, that's when I put on the, pretend that you've got the confidence.
Any take on that stuff, Nevine?
That's interesting. I never knew you pretended, Becky. Because you always come across very confident. I have a hard time pretending. So even when I'm presenting up, if I don't know, I will end up, just saying I don't know. I sometimes just don't know, and I'll just say it. It's really hard for me to pretend confidence, probably because I had to learn it. But I'm not at the place where, and it's interesting you're telling your kids that already how to do that, because nobody ever told me that growing up. So if I don't know, I'll just say I don't know, and that's the end of it. I've admired people who can, respond to any question, and sometimes, embellish it, whatever, because of everything they know. And what they're saying makes sense. I don't have that skill. I don't know how to do that.
Well, but I do think there's a fine line that you're drawing there, and I think it's very important. If I truly don't know, I'm going to say I don't know, and give me
Okay.
the AR or whatever, and
Yeah.
let's come back with
Yeah.
it. The
Yeah.
thing I was thinking is you're walking into a meeting, you're presenting to a very broad audience, and you don't actually know what direction it's going to go into. So in those situations, I feel I feel a large lack of confidence because I don't. So that's where I project and I pretend. But then if I get a question, I don't know. Yeah, for your own credibility, you have to say, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Then I understand. Then I totally agree with what you're saying.
Okay, cool.
Do you
Got
guys
it.
think that it's different, I guess, coming into confidence or maintaining confidence in the technical field? I mean, you're both, made it very high up technically in a very competitive industry. Is that different?
I think within the technical field, to what Nevine was talking about before, is I feel like if you don't have the base credibility of the technical capability and the knowledge base, I don't know in the non-technical fields, but I feel like that is table stakes on top of what you would have maybe in a non-technical field. But I don't know if I could talk to like the VP path because I've just never been on it. But I'm not sure I'm answering the question you're asking.
Well, I'm just wondering if I mean, I understand that we don't have a control group because you both went the technical path. So we don't know what it would have been like for you otherwise. I'm just wondering if you feel like being in the room, being at the top in these technical rooms is different, or pushes harder or tests your confidence more.
If you've got the fundamentals, or if you understand, I would say that technical or non-technical, there has to be a certain amount of competence that you have to be in the room. And so I actually feel that the confidence you feel or the confidence you project is really has to do with how much you know and how much you understand the problem. And if you do, I don't think it matters whether you're technical or not. I mean, there are problems that are really hard and require a lot of work that have to do with, building a strong organization, figuring out how to recruit for a certain project, which maybe aren't technical, but require the same levels of, knowledge and confidence, et cetera. So I don't know that I would draw that line between a technical field and a non-technical field.
I think the interesting thing that you're alluding to there, Nevine, is I think there's also, you have to think about the entire person. So at least for me, my confidence is not just the topic that I'm talking about here. It's how much sleep did I get in the last week? Am I working out? Are my kids driving me crazy, right? What's going on? Are my spouse and I both in a good, stable space? And how are we balancing that? So that's the other part of it, I think, that everybody has to think about is it's not just that moment that you're showing up in that room, but how are you balancing across your life and making sure you're refueling yourself and to make sure you're in a good spot when you do walk into the room as well mentally.
That's a really good point. Is there anything that you guys wish you'd known sooner in your careers that you would apply or you would have applied differently earlier?
Yeah, don't let the loudest person in the room bully you. Sometimes there are people who, I guess, exude confidence and fake it really well. In the end, you feel bullied because you walk out of the room, you go, that really didn't make any sense. I should have said something. And you just, didn't have the confidence or the, I guess it is just the confidence to say, no, this makes no sense. It took me a while to actually learn that too. I'd walk out of a meeting, I'd take a few steps, I go, this made no sense whatsoever. And then I'd write a long email to explain why, etc. But being able to, think on your feet and respond was something that it took me a while to learn. And I wish I had, been coached or mentored earlier into how to do that. So.
And to build on that, Nevine, the other thing for me was that you're not the only person going through whatever problem you're working through. Even if you're maybe the main person going through it, there's people that you can lean on and talk to of, am I going in the right direction? Hey, can you help me in this meeting because that guy or that person keeps talking so much, right? So how do you only need 2 or 3 partners, right? A couple of people that you can use as a sounding board. For me, I think that was the biggest thing because like Nevine said, there were times I wasn't comfortable speaking up. And even if I am somebody like, wow, that seems weird, and they had said something, it would have just built my own confidence, right?
Okay, so reach out and kind of partner with people even before or during a meeting. So, and then the other thing is, how did you figure out how to generate enough confidence that you would say something? How did you first make that step and decide to speak up, or say, rather than wait till I walk out of the room, how am I going to actually say something sooner? I guess, Becky, maybe for you, it was checking with somebody else who's present, who can either open that door for you or at least like be the sounding board back to you saying, no, that is a good point, you should bring it up.
Or poke me of like, hey, you're being too quiet, you need to insert yourself here, right? Is the third piece.
Yeah. And I also watched somebody who was really good at it. So if he didn't understand something, he would stop the conversation and start asking questions. And after watching him for a while, I realized that's the technique I should use. And so as opposed to, sometimes you feel something's wrong. And as opposed to just walking out and thinking about it, I said, you know what? Let me stop right here and go, you know what? I don't really understand what you're saying. Can we try this again? Can you explain it? Can we move in smaller steps? I build the confidence to say, I didn't understand. I don't understand. Help me understand. And usually when people don't really understand what they're saying, they don't know how to explain it. And then you start breaking it. And then other people in the room, to Becky's point, start helping you because they come in and go, okay, you're right. I didn't understand it either. Let's walk through it. And then you build a momentum in the room to actually get to the right place as opposed to the wrong direction that you've been going in.
That makes sense. And I guess worst case, you don't understand and they clarify and now it makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. We're all in a better place. And now that person that was leading us, we all follow them and understand what they're saying. Whereas before, maybe it was going over my head. I didn't quite understand all the ramifications of what they were saying.
And the other thing that I think is important to keep in mind is there's probably 3 other people in the room that are just as lost as you are. So when Nevine brings up those comments, it lifts the conversation for the entire room.
Well, thanks, ladies, for the talk today. It's been really good to hear from you. And I feel like we should let you get back to quality and, engineering of our next-gen silicon here. But really interesting to talk to you. And thanks for giving your perspective and taking the time.
Thank you, Camille.
Thank you, Camille.